Hello, everyone, and welcome for the weekly live stream of the Platformers. And today we are going to talk about templating and scaffolding in Canoe and especially in Backstage and Algo workflows. And for today's session, we have one of our co-hosts, Carlos Santana from AWS. Hey, Carlos, how are you?
Doing great, guy. Another episode, another platform journey. So we are doing Canoe today. It's one of the projects that in AWS we're helping a lot of customers, such as Autodesk. That we have Jesse here with us. So I'm happy to be here to talk about scaffolding and templates. Jesse.
Yeah, how you doing? So I'm Jesse Sanford. I'm a software architect at Autodesk, working on our platform tooling, and most recently on our IDP. And a lot of what I do is help teams understand how best to plug in their capabilities to our IDP, and many times that involves templating. So here we are.
That's amazing because templating and scaffolding is one of the key aspects and the heart of how you get adoption into white teams, because you always think about service creation as the day zero of something that you want to solve immediately. Um, Maybe we can talk a little bit about scaffolding and templating in Canoe. Like, how is it working today?
Do you want to take that, Carlos, or you want me to talk about it?
Go ahead, Jesse. Maybe
Yeah,
explain
yeah,
the domain problem. Like a developer goes to an IDP and then day
right.
zero. What do I how do I start?
Right. Well, I'll also put it in the context of Autodesk, because the work that we're doing with CNOE and the IDP Builder tool, actually, was ideated out of some of the needs that we had at Autodesk, and a lot of that was around our production of um, platform capabilities using the Kubernetes ecosystem, using the KRM, and the idea of controllers on a Kubernetes platform to manage integration points of capabilities that we had that might be legacy or that we're building greenfield, but that need to be brought together. And where better to surface those capabilities, being that they're platform capabilities, than in our IDP, which is kind of where we're collecting all of our tooling and everything else into our systems model. And so, Backstage natively has this idea of scaffolding and templating, and one of the functions that we've kind of centered around inside of IDP Builder is having kind of rapid iteration of the capabilities that I was mentioning on the underlying Kubernetes cluster that IDP Builder stands up, but then also being able to take those capabilities and develop templates for them really quickly, all on the user's local machine, so that you can kind of like go back and forth between your kube builder workflow, and then exposing that capability through templates inside the local Backstage as well, and then kind of go back and forth and realize like, oh, I don't need these fields to be visible, or I need to develop some other new field in order to kind of meet this particular use case, and have that all happen without needing to even do any commits to upstream or into a GitHub that's shared. You could do it all on your local machine using the facilities that are built in the IDP Builder.
Yeah, that's one of the features that we remember, guy, that we show here of using IDP Builder. That was like you just start a command line and pass the magic flag of I think it's no exit,
Yeah.
and then start watching your folders in your local machine and then syncing them to Git behind the scenes, and you don't have to like Git commit and Git commit, Git push, just to get like Jesse was saying, like, oh, I don't like that field, or this should be named like that. And again, this is a platform engineer like developing the templates, but Jesse, right, you have also developers like front-end developers, JavaScript developers, that
Yep.
basically they run the CLI and they work on the experience, right, the user
Right.
experience, and they're not necessarily like know the Kubernetes controller building.
Absolutely, and that's actually the other side of it, and that was kind of what we talked about at KubeCon EU a little bit, was that use case as well. There's no reason why you even need to bother with working with Kubernetes using IDP Builder. You can just work with Backstage directly. A lot of what that has to do with is interacting with the Backstage APIs, but they are available to you when you run IDP Builder with the reference implementation. So we can talk about what that means a little bit later, but for the most part, the front end developers that we have, they would be able to stand up Backstage with IDP Builder or not. I'm actually working on getting them plugged into IDP Builder now as well. But when you have that Backstage instance running locally somehow, preferably with IDP Builder, you can do things like, add new templates, add other things to your systems model, expose those templates and kind of like understand the way that they're going to be rendered, and possibly make CSS tweaks and so on and so forth. And then when you're ready, you can commit those back to the source tree so that others can kind of download and do the same. And one of the beautiful things about IDP Builder is that it kind of like masks away all of the underlying dependencies, and so it's kind of like a agnostic way of running that entire tool chain, whether or not you're on a Mac or a Linux machine, as long as you have Docker installed. And actually, we have a version of it that runs with Podman and just uses containerd under the hood, so we don't even need Docker anymore. You can do all of that and know that the next time someone runs it, or when it gets put into your CI tool chain, that everything's going to run without needing to debug dependency issues and so on and so forth.
I think that's amazing because it brings the ability to develop Backstage from the front-end capability, as you said, but also from behind the scenes, and tweak the scaffolding, the templates, everything to be matched with what you...
Yeah, and a lot of what you do with templating is kind of like sourcing new scaffolder plugins, possibly dealing with various serialization issues of inputs and outputs, and so being able to rapidly do that without needing to commit and wait for a CI build and then the deploy to go see if it actually works is really powerful, because that type of debugging is really slow if you don't have something that turns it around really quickly.
Yeah, like so running. I think that what provides that velocity is having a Git server, an ephemeral Git server in your laptop that you don't have to commit or maybe feel ashamed of like putting a lot of like commits over and over a GitHub repo, and then getting them back. So and one thing that a lot of people may not know, Backstage has a little bit of sprinkle of GitOps. Mm-hmm. Because when you configure Backstage, you configure, hey, get the template files from Git, get some catalog information from Git, and it has, I think it's a 1 minute loop of like every 1 minute it goes back to Git, gets that configuration. So you need a Git server. So having Git locally in your laptop and it's syncing from a folder is like quickly, you can iterate quickly versus like trying to do it locally, and then when you're going to share with the team or CI, then you switch it to Git and it doesn't work because the path is incorrect or the file is incorrect. I have done it many times. This is where I lose time. Like, but most of my day is like figuring out why I'm not have a path correct, why I'm missing the last slash or slash in the middle, right?
Absolutely. And if you're using GitHub Enterprise or public GitHub, like sometimes the URL structure can be a little different and that throws you off. I think it is good to know, and then folks should know this, that like out of the box, Backstage is actually centered around, and the templating and the scaffolding is actually centered around GitOps workflows, right? Like a lot of what the templater was, or at least the core functionality of the templater, is to produce Git repos and pull requests against repos. And so when you are first getting started working with templates, mostly what you're doing is actually setting up like skeletons, and then the templating of the files in those skeletons, and the plugging in of the values that people kind of input into the forms that kind of just get turned into a PR. That is kind of like the inception of a GitOps workflow, right? Like you could imagine that you'd have some sort of CD tooling behind the scenes. And in fact, that's actually one of the plugins and one of the templates that we have right now is actually drives the onboarding to Argo CD, so that folks can kind of produce a repo that then is like registered with our Argo CD, and then forevermore is watched for manifests that then get loaded into our platform IDP. I think if I was to kind of like pull back the curtain on the way that the scaffolder and the templating kind of was originally designed, it really is to just get started on a GitOps workflow. You pair that with an Argo CD or an Argo workflows, and then you can imagine the sky's the limit at that point.
Yeah. So I think like just before we are moving forward, like someone asked us a question on LinkedIn. So they asked like, where can I find the first and second episode, please, to touch up. So all the episodes are available on our YouTube. I will just post a link into the comments, so you can find it on the comments, and then you can watch the first episode. In the first episode, we talked about IDP Builder in general, and how we can spin up like a full IDP environment to build with in 10 minutes. And in the second episode, we deep diver into Argo CD, Git, and how things works behind the scenes. So those are available in the previous episodes.
Yeah, I'm putting the link also to the website, right? Platformers.community live streams. You can also find it there. I don't know if Guy can put that link to show it.
Yeah, I will put all of them and people can see them.
Yeah, and then let's jump. So we're talking about the Backstage scaffolding. It's like that button that when people log in into Backstage and click the button create. So Guy, do you want to show us like what's behind that button for a platformer that wants to like create? I think they call templates, right, in the UI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the UI, let me show it a little bit. So what I'm spinning here is an IDP builder on a code spaces, and this is the Backstage environment that's been up for us. As we can see there on, we can come in here to create a new components, and based on the available templates, we can create our own template. For example, create a new basic deployment on Kubernetes. We can give it a name, I don't know, test up, and review it and create it. And what will happen behind the scenes is that Git repo will be created based on the Backstage skeletons, and Argo CD is going to deploy this application into the local Kubernetes cluster. So in IDP Builder, we have also kind cluster run in it, and this is where Argo CD is going to deploy those. So if you're taking a quick look on the code, so this is the code of IDP Builder. I'm going to use the reference implementation. And here we got like a directory called Backstage templates as entities. And here you can see like free, and we can create a new one, a full one, that would have the new templates we are going to use. So we can basically copy for example, the previous one. And now I want to show you basically how you can change and adjust and develop your own templates in Backstage using IDP Builder. So this would be a flow that the developer of the IDP would do on a daily basis. So let's call it basic HPA, and we can add it into the catalog. So we will copy the catalog entry for it. Backend. Now we'll call it basic HPA. It means that it's going to be like a simple application with basic HPA. Create a basic HPA Kubernetes deployment. And that's it. And what we will do is that to the skeleton, we will add into the manifests a new file, or we can just adjust the previous file. So we'll copy some HPA example.
So what is a skeleton? Like, what's that folder? So people don't get scared.
Yeah. So the skeleton folder will be the skeleton or the templates that is going to be used to create the Git repository for our own service. So Backstage basically is going to take that, and based on action is going to create the catalog info and the deployments based on the template and the skeleton we have created.
So it's a common thing that that people use in Backstage is but you're mentioning that this is a folder with the files that eventually will go into your GitHub repo, but you have to do some string replacement, right? There's some things that are unique to this app.
Exactly. So if we're taking a look on the deployment, we do see that it's templated. Like we have the values of the name that we put it in the catalog just before, entity ID or the labels that we are going to be used in order to create that.
And what is that language? Is that like Go templating, or is it like Jinja?
I think it's Jinja. Jinja with YAML template. So it's kind of look familiar for who is familiar with Helm.
Yeah, I was thinking. I thought it was Helm, me a Kubernetes head, right?
Yeah.
You have a hammer, like everything says Kubernetes.
But I don't think it works like the same way as a Helm in matters of where it gets the values. By the way, the value syntax is a little bit different.
Yeah, and the documentation of Backstage has good documentation. I was looking into it, and they have like what are the things that you can do here, like pipe dump, right? It's if you want to get logging of it.
Yeah, I think it's actually Nunjux is the
Nunjux. Yeah, Nunjux is front end technology. I used to be a web developer back in the days.
Yeah.
And then, for example, we'll use the same YAML. Like it's not the best thing to do, but we will use the same YAML that will deploy both of them. We can create a new one. Maybe creating a new one would be better. Manifests, new file, HPA YAML, and I think we also need to update it on the template, if I remember correctly. No, we just use the full folder. Okay. So now we have created like the basic HPA, we have added it into the catalog, and then we can use it. Carlos, by the way, before that, you reference to the IDP builder no exit, and this is what you can see running at the bottom of the page. It means that Git is going to take this basic HPA folder and replicate it into the Git URL. So if we are using the same code spaces.
Yeah, this is a time saver, right? Of like you're working with a folder structure, and it automatically is creating repos and syncing the files into Git. Something that if you work with in terms of platform engineering, it doesn't have to be Kubernetes, right? Just working with file structures and Git and GitOps, it creates make it zoom a little bit more. So the files that you might really like edit, right? A few seconds later, they are synced here.
Can you make it a little?
Make it bigger, Guy, because
Sorry.
Yeah, just a little.
Command plus a couple of times.
There you go.
Yeah. And one thing that for Git is open source. It's a very like small footprint template. I don't know if it's written in Go or not. But it's very small. It's one pod. It's ephemeral, right? I don't know if people are using it for production. But it has kind of like the GitLab, GitHub capability. It has a UI. You can do pull requests. It has an org. It has this UI that you can like see the files. So it gives you kind of like that aspect of like the 12 factor that we use in platform engineering, right? That we want to have like our dev environments should look as much as possible as a production environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it actually, with recent commits to I think it. I'm gonna be
this week
probably wrong about the versioning, but it's like 1.4.4 or something like that. It also allows us to host OCI repos locally, and one of the things that I think we'll probably have in a future episode is showing how we manage our Backstage image, the image that actually runs. How we rapidly iterate on that image, because a lot of what you do with Backstage is also plugin development, and so getting those plugins loaded into the image can be a little bit burdensome unless you have a local OCI registry, which Gitty now provides.
Yeah, and Jesse doesn't like to brag, but I like to brag for Jesse. So Jesse actually went to the Git community and worked on a pull request to enable Git to support OCR the way that we wanted to use it. And that's another server that you don't have to connect out, right? To push an image into your Docker Hub or your ECR to get back to do development. That'll be something that can run in Kind. And Kind have supported like the container registry aspect of but it's kind of a little bit like to stitch it together. And we didn't want to run another pod. Like if Git is already a pod that is running, we can just like have it in there. I don't know if it has a UI for the container registry, but at least for the CNOE workflow, that's something that we also are doing. Just want to clarify, we're going out to the other open source project. Like in Backstage, we added pull requests to enable like Git actions. And like Jesse, someone from Red Hat did that. Autodesk went to Git and enable it to do OCR. So in CNOE, it's like we're trying to look for the best developer and platform lifecycle workflow for them to work locally. But when we find roadblocks, we go out to those communities and send pull requests, right? Because we're creating the workflow. We don't want to own those pieces.
Yep. And similarly with, I think there was some work done with the Kind community to get Podman working locally as well. So we're actively, going to all of the upstreams that we're dependent upon, and trying to just simplify this dream of being able to do all of this locally. And in fact, I even have some other tricks up my sleeve, which I displayed a little bit at KubeCon, but didn't kind of work as well as I thought it would. But you can do all this locally and offline, which is kind of
yeah. So the Airflow, hopefully we'll have an episode of air gap platform engineering or IDP. Because you in the airplane, right? You can have everything. You have your code, you have the Git server, you have your container registry, you have your Kubernetes,
right?
Everything running locally.
A little bit more work as a KubeCon prezo too, with terrible Wi-Fi and all the rest.
Yeah, I just got a question today. Like we did a talk session in one of the local events in here, and someone asked about platform engineering for on-prem. And we said like it's you need to tweak some things, but it can work on your environment. So no worries for the on-prem focused people.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing to see just how much amazing work that you do with all of these companies and projects in order to make that work. And it gives a lot of confidence for people to use CNOE and understand that there is a lot of value there, and they can plug and play whatever they like and whatever they have in order to use it.
I think that's also a good time to plug. And I don't know if you guys have the ability to link to it, but it's also a good time to plug the fact that we are actively available inside of the CNOE interest channel on the CNCF Slack. And so if you're using any of this tooling and you're running into roadblocks, please come seek us there, because we respond pretty quickly.
Yep. Somebody was asking this weekend, like, how do they want to run Cilium, right, in the Kind cluster? So that was kind of the last ones. And then sometimes we don't know, or there might be a possibility. But you can pass YAML files, extra YAML files when you bootstrap IDP Builder, and those YAML files get applied. Recently they got added to, for example, if you need certain configuration for Argo CD, which is one of the core components, like a secret or a config map, you're able to pass that.
That's right.
Yeah. So this
you want to continue?
Putting on the bottom
this
of
is the
page.
Slack. And if you don't know how to get into the CNCF Slack, is slack.cncf.io. And then that you can put your email and get an invite. Guys, you want to move to showing us your new template if it shows up?
Yeah. So let's see, because it requires some time in order to show up in here.
I think 1 minute or two it should show up. As you can see here, the description and the title that you put in your YAML file at the top, it shows here.
If that catalog YAML was already loaded, it might you might want to actually re-register it or remove it and re-register it. It should show up.
Does the target like remove it from here?
Well, did you change the name, because it goes into the database as the metadata.name. So if you copy paste it and call it basic, then it's overriding the other one.
Oh, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Just things that happen to people when they're like troubleshooting for an hour and don't know why they don't show up. I'm not going to name names.
Yeah, you also can use the Backstage APIs or the facilities built into the UI there to just kind of.
Yeah, you can also. That's usually I do that also. Like that button that says register existing.
I just copy.
You can go directly.
Yeah,
I need that one.
And then
template.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mentioned, Backstage will go and fetch those YAML files, but they becomes just entries in the database, right? So the unique ID is the name of the template.
Mhm.
Yeah, and now we got it. We can start it, and let's give it a try. Let's see if it works. I hope it is. It's not
And
a
then
demo that
these are the parameters, right? So these are the parameters that you can put in your form to collect the inputs from the user, and then these are the strings that you're going to find and replace in the YAML files or whatever file. It could be a README, right? Even like the README.md file. It can be any file.
Yeah. By the way, it's important to say that the steps that we see in here are the steps that are available within the template YAML itself. So we can see the template, the publish, and all the Argo CD components of it. So what we are going to run is actually codifying in here. So if we need to adjust it, it's available from the template YAML file. So let's give it a run. Let's see how it goes. I hope I didn't put any mistake in there. Cool.
Well,
Okay,
the
now
good
it's
news
done.
is debug it all right where you're at.
It's missing out of sync. Maybe it will take it some time to get synced. But what
One
we
of
can do,
One of the things that's interesting about that workflow that you were showing with the steps and whatnot is that a lot of what the front end template designers are doing is trying to like work back from a user experience that our user experience designers have been asking for, and so doing things like allowing for repository pickers, or there's a lot of UI components that can be made use of, and there's also a you can logically group things into steps like a wizard interface. You can have like a section that asks for inputs that pertain to one part of the template, and then go to another page that has a section that has another set of inputs, so that the user's not overwhelmed with just like a huge, massive form of a bunch of fields, depending on how complex your templates are.
wow, that's amazing. I think it would be really great to see like how those forms, I would call it, looks, or wizard looks when they have really good UI and not like only the basic one that we have in here.
Yeah, so Backstage, the templates are actually based on JSON schema, I believe.
JSON schema, yep. React JSON form.
Yeah, which
I can put the link here.
Rendered via React JSON form, but they also have this kind of, they mix in this concept of it's UI schema UI or a JSON UI or something like that, and so you can actually like specify a number of things about the form fields right inside the JSON schema, and kind of have like the template do things like acquired fields and string length and things like that right inside the template that when you're designing the template in that same file.
Oh wow.
Yeah, very
That's
flexible.
cool.
I mean, the Backstage is built using React, and React is a very rich community of libraries and components. And they give you, the documentation is very good in Backstage in terms of customizing these experiences of the wizard. And in terms of platform engineering, some of the templates that we have in CNOE is like, one will ask you about like your app, like if it's going to be like a Node.js, like you can select if it's going to Node.js or Java and those aspects. And maybe the second wizard, like the grouping that Jesse was saying, maybe like what is the dependent services that you're going to connect to, like an S3 or a database, or depending the database that you're going to connect to, or maybe you want to connect to an open API, right? And then provide it there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that I can see that our pod is running, but I can see something in Argo is out of sync. I get something with the HBA configuration is problematic. What I can do is I can go into the Argo CD dashboard.
And this is all running an IDP builder, by the way. So folks, you get Argo CD out of box as well. Argo workflows as well with the reference implementation.
Yeah, some of the plugins are already in the Backstage by the CNOE project. So if you start with the CNOE Backstage instance, some of those plugins are there, and some of the actions, and that, like for example, registering your an Argo app that is in the backstage backend using the common Argo CD plugin.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I can see I missed something maybe with the configuration of the YAML. I guess resource not found in the cluster. Maybe it's V1. It should be V1 beta or something like that. I think
V2. I think what version of
V2 now?
Kubernetes you have?
It's the latest one, I guess. I can fix it after or while we are doing some other stuff, and then we'll show the final result.
That's not as interesting to this workflow as well, but it looks like it's just missing the actual resource that was being rendered. I think what is interesting is that manifest was written to Gitty, and you can actually take a look at it. And
Yep.
if we had gotten the resource type right, it would have synced.
Yeah, you can see
This-
your app in
That
there.
Kubernetes barking at us
Manifest.
in the background.
Yeah.
And HPA, I think, is V2.
Yeah, you can see that the template was hydrated. That this document was hydrated from the values that you input inside the template.
Yeah.
form.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
name, right? The name is the one, the values that name that you replace.
Mhm.
The
And
oh,
so you know, while it's really great that you can have everything kind of sync via Gitty and kick off with IDP Builder, kind of automatically kick off those deploys via Argo CD, you can also do have other side effects happen from templates as well through the use of various different plugins. You can make curl calls out, or you can notify a Slack channel that something was created or deployed. And so a lot of what our folks that are designing these templates, are starting to go beyond just this basic GitOps workflow and into other areas of notifications and seeking approvals and so on and so forth. We even have one template that creates Jira issues.
Yeah, so can you go back to the templates guy so we can see like what Jesse's talking about is the steps, right? The steps are called actions. I think it's called action, and then the action has a specific unique ID, and there's actions there's a library it's a catalog of actions. There's actions like Jesse was saying, like what action do you want to take at this step? So it becomes a CI, right? A pipeline. This is essentially a pipeline of tasks
is essentially
that you're working with. So it could be things like sending messages, creating files. In this case, you're creating a GitHub repo.
Mhm.
It could be that you maybe not creating a GitHub repo, but maybe like inserting a folder into a existing monolith GitHub repo, right? Which is very common in some organizations.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've been working on actually to make use of that specific functionality, is to allow for folks to take an existing repository that drives our current CD platform to sort of like deploy an app, like take an app repository that might have a declarative definition of I want to deploy to this region, right? So take that repository and then copy that existing region and swap in some new values so that you can deploy to a net new region, all just from filling out a single form in Backstage, right? And then so you could imagine like having that template do a bunch of things behind the scenes to make the standing up of that new region possible, so that all a user has to do is come and fill out a form, and then they get their app in a new region.
So, and I would add, this is super cool, and I would add that if you're looking for the actions available for the deployment that you have right now, you can do /actions at the end, and then you have all the available actions with the relevant documentation.
I learned something today.
Yeah. So if you go,
how do you quickly get there? There's a link from the UI?
Yeah, so there's a link available. If you go to the create, and then on the left side you have installed actions.
So you're telling me RTFM. Okay.
Installed actions, and then you have all the manual.
The task list is actually interesting too. We don't need to talk about it in great depth, but that's another from that little ellipses or hamburger URL. You can get the task list, which you can see you can see the executions of your templates here. So if you wanted to like go back in time and see a specific execution of a template, this is how you get to it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you can argue like you're working. This is another CI/CD pipeline, right? Like you have a pipeline of execution of things, and then you're using common I would say tasks or actions or steps that are available from the open source community in terms of finding them. Similar way as you can have like common tasks that are available for Argo workflows in CI/CD or GitHub Actions, which is many out there, right? Or even Tecton tasks to build that CI/CD. The only thing that you have to choose is how much are you going to build in backstage versus enough backstage to a certain point, and then the next tool, right, or workflow takes over to do the other aspect. Because a lot of platform engineering teams or customers that I work with, some of them use backstage, but some of them don't, and some of them actually use backstage. I think we can invite some of them here. Of some of them use backstage, and some of them build a CLI, which I think is very cool. They just provided the developers a platform CLI that they run in their terminal, and they get a text UI where they choose kind of this thing like, what do you want to deploy or what region do you want to reproduce? But at the end of the day, just creating files in Git. And one of the powerful things of Argo CD is application templates that has generators that when you create a folder or a branch, it automatically detects the files that are associated to that, and then automatically creates an Argo CD app on the fly. So that's how you can like dynamically deploy more things into your platform.
Yeah, that's really strong, and that's really taking it all the way from soup to nuts. We have similar onboarding to the platform that's done via other mechanisms, but almost everything is either through a GitOps interface or through some sort of like web form. I would love to see some CLI tools come out of this.
Yeah, CLI would be very very handy, right? I'm a CLI nerd, right? You see a CLI for everything because I grew up in Linux terminals. But yeah, UIs are very good on those aspects.
Yeah. I mean, and actually, that just so folks kind of understand the way that the templates work a little bit more. That's all API driven, right? And so one of the things that we do with our templates, if we really kind of like taking it through the full SDLC, is when those templates are created and kind of like loaded and then are dependent upon, we actually also have the facility to do testing against them. And so you can actually test that a template actually correctly hydrates your Git repo and then check the output and so on and so forth, because all of that is an API behind the hood. Like the invocation you're seeing there in the UI and backstage is all just making API calls to the back end. And so you can hydrate templates, you can execute templates directly from your CLI if you know how to structure the curl calls.
Yeah, great point. Imagine you have in your organization, I've seen some end users telling me that they have hundreds, or that you should only show 6. Some of them have hundreds, and they're trying to consolidate them to create them like at the beginning, maybe choose the path so you don't have many of them. But if you have many, how do you make sure that somebody didn't break one of those templates? Well, you have to have automation. So this is where automation comes in place. Like if somebody changed the template, how do we test it? So some people may think that just because you're using a UI, right, in Backstage, that you don't have end-to-end integration tests that you can automatically test that. And the good thing is you can use IDP Builder in a GitHub action, for example, or a small CI pipeline that just IDP Builder up, right, create, and then run something to test those APIs. So whatever is your framework, right, Ginkgo in Go or whatever is your choice of API testing or unit testing, integration testing. Even to the point I was seeing Chainsaw from Kernel. They have a kind of like a next generation of QTTL of the assertion of like Kubernetes resources that you can assert.
Yeah.
One of the things that we were doing when we were displaying the demo at KubeCon was talking about merging those two workflows, the workflow of building capabilities with Kube Builder and the operator pattern, and then exposing those via Backstage. And we have some tooling that that we built with CNOE around taking a CRD, a custom resource definition manifest, and then generating a template directly from it, right? And so you actually, without any templating knowledge, you can, if you just know how to create a CRD for Kubernetes and the operator that backs it, you can get a template for free and then just kind of like load it directly into Backstage. And one of the things that becomes really powerful with that is that, if I'm editing a CRD and kind of like know what that template is supposed to, eventually look like to some degree, I can actually write unit tests to do the whole thing. I can actually like test that the CRD was created correctly, test that I can like, and then a functional test to test that it can load into the Kubernetes locally, and that Kubernetes accepts it, and then I can actually test that Backstage takes the Backstage API takes in the template, and then I can actually execute that template in a test as well, and see that the manifest that's created from that template is loaded into Kubernetes and accepted, and that the operator actually takes action on it. So you can get like full soup to nuts. We showed a large portion of that at KubeCon, which I just sent the link to that demo if folks are interested in that.
Have you sent me on Slack or something?
I put it into the chat here in the live.
Oh, got it. I will grab it.
Yeah. It's a little advanced, but the idea is that these templates are programmatically available to you inside this Backstage environment, and so you can, as you develop that huge suite of that huge body of templates, as an organization like Autodesk is already, we're swarmed with folks who are interested in creating templates for their capabilities, and actually that's one of the hardest problems that we have right now, is the information design, like the kind of understanding of how do we surface the right templates at the right time to our users inside the IDP, and how do we like stop from having just a kind of endless sea of templates that no one really knows where anything is at. And so Backstage does have the ability to kind of like label templates, and so one of the things that we do is actually like make some templates more prominent by like showing them kind of like floating them to the top of the list of templates and saying like these are like the paved path, if you will. But we also don't want to stop folks from contributing. And so a lot of what we do is kind of, some initial hand holding to make sure that they're designing templates that are actually useful. But then, just let them, create them. And if they are the only ones that are using those templates, that's fine. It's very similar, like you were mentioning, to a common, CI environment or a common CD environment, where folks will end up having some very custom use cases and they'll need to create their own pipelines. The scaffolder really is just kind of like a pipeline tool.
Yeah, and Backstage is open source, it's React, so you can add your own UI interfaces. I showed one this year in one of the conferences of showing a AI machine learning chatbot where I just tell it like I want to deploy a Node.js app that talks to an S3 bucket, right? And it generates me the code. That could be the input to a template, or you can just type one sentence saying I'm looking for a template that connects to MySQL and it has Java or something, and I can maybe find the right template or the two templates that you can choose from. So that the flexibility is there. But what Jesse was saying around Kubernetes API as your platform interface, then that's where the CRDs are very important. And CRDs, custom resource definitions, for those that don't know, is a custom way to extend Kubernetes to provide more APIs. And one of those, you can create them in-house with KubeBuilder or Go programming. You can use Meta Controller. You can use things like Crossplane to surface the cloud provider APIs or compositions. But in Kubernetes, in CRDs, we use OpenAPI Spec v3, which is, this was called Swagger. That information is there. It tells you like what are the properties, if it's an array, what are the required fields. So that's the metadata that in CNOE we have a CLI that will extract that metadata of that specification and then generate or get you started with a Backstage template, which is the form, right? At the end of the day, you're creating for example, a crossplane claim, which is like the object, the resource that you create in Kubernetes. Just checking on time. Do we want to move on? Jesse has something to show us?
Yeah, I was actually wondering, do we want to show some of the templates that we've been producing? I can show a little bit of that, or we can show that template generation portion from the demo. I'm actually going to put this CNOE CLI in this IDP. So there's IDP Builder. I don't know if we posted that one yet, but the CNOE CLI is another tool that we've produced that Manabu actually, I think.
Yeah, that's the tool I was referring to.
And so this actually does a few things. And one of the handy things that it does is that template generation. But another thing that it does is it'll allow you to do things like make sure that a CRD was the needs of a CRD are available to you on a K8s cluster. So you can actually, like, one of the plugins that we have for Backstage, that CNOE actually has a few plugins that we created for Backstage, actually is able to vet that. I feel like, what do we call it? It just makes sure that the template, when it executes, that the right resources are available for it on the Kubernetes cluster backing it. And so you can, with in combination with the tools that we use to load the manifest from the template into Kubernetes, you can do like a pre-deploy step so that you don't try to push, manifests that are not going to work on your Kubernetes cluster, like what you saw. Well, actually, you were doing that via Argo CD, but you can actually write directly to the local Kubernetes cluster with IDP Builder, going around Argo CD in that sense. And the CNOE plugins will help kind of make that workflow without needing to go through GitOps. Like I was mentioning earlier, not everything goes through GitOps, and it actually is kind of nice because you can actually see the output from the Kubernetes cluster directly inside that template execution.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Do you want to show
one of the templates?
Yeah, I'll show a little bit of it. I'm actually gonna play that video because it's just easier than standing it up here locally. Let me get that loaded.
No worries. I'm trying to fix the HPA at the same time so we can post the YAML somewhere.
Did you add the V2? It's auto scaling that.
I added the V2 and there is something changed about the configuration of it. It's not only the V2, also
the spec is different.
Yeah. So maybe I copied like very old HPA.
Oh, this is really strange. My desktop. Hold on one second. Let me just see.
No worries. So I will try to fix it on the same time, and I will see if we can post it on Git, whatever. Send a Git, or maybe we can also merge that into the CNOE with more advanced capabilities and not only the HPA.
I'll send you the link to the.
Cue this up to the right portion while we were talking about that. Okay. So yeah.
Does it work?
All right. Let me see. I'm going to try and share. Now.
Go ahead.
Let's present. Let's see.
No, I can't find it on the
share screen. Oh, I'm gonna have to. Let me see. Does it? I might have to leave because apparently my browser settings are going to require me to come back. Let's see. But I can also try this share. Yeah, I'm going to quit and reopen. Otherwise, let's see if the share video. I know where the cue point is. Let's see. Present. Cancel. Present. Share video file. Desktop. Okay.
Oh, now I can see it.
And let's see if I can scrub to the right place. It's right around. So sorry for. Oh, I lost it.
Do you want me to share? Okay.
Did it stop? Okay, here we go. I'm just trying to scrub to the right spot. Okay. This is all IDP Builder, which you should. Okay, so here you see I'm actually going to. I have no templates loaded, right? And so. At the beginning of this video, and if you were to look at that link, we created a CRD that allows for a kube job to be built, right? So it's like you create a kube job by submitting this template, and so the template itself is set up in a way, or so the CRD itself just takes in the name for the kube job and an image to run, right? And so if you're interested in CRDs or how to use Kube Builder or something like that, you can go ahead and watch that video or go out and probably find much better curriculum. But at the end of the day, we have a JSON API. Sorry, we have a Open API spec v3 document that describes some fields that need to get filled in. And so what we want to do is take that Open API spec v3 document and generate a template inside of Backstage without needing to do anything special. Just kind of one for one copy those fields into a way that Backstage will understand it, and then get a template for Backstage for free that knows how to hydrate that Open API spec. So I'm just going to show. So here you see that familiar URL. This is actually the IDP builder, and so we're going to use the CNOE CLI to generate this template. Let's see if we can. See here. Yeah, so this is the CRD. This is the Kube Builder project here, right? And so I'm just showing that this is just a generic Kube Builder project. Nothing special. Basically, just scaffolded essentially.
So how did you go from a Kube Builder CRD that you're building to a UI in Backstage, right?
Exactly. So this is just showing this is the very basic structure in Go. Again, this is just effectively going to build the Open API spec with those fields. I'll just jump forward a little bit more. Let's see. So.
Yeah, you don't have to even compile the code. Just make manifest. It generates.
Generate the manifest from that type. And I'm just showing. So here's the Open API spec, and again, it just takes in the name. Again, this is the actual CRD document, right? And it just has it introspects that Go type, that Go struct, and then creates a CRD from it. And here I'm loading that controller with KO. Again, this is other tooling having to deal with.
So you're pushing the controller into the Git registry.
Yep, exactly. Local registry. So I can deploy the controller. So the controller's deployed. Just jumping forward a little bit more. My apologies, I had the wrong cue point earlier. So here we go. Here's the CNOE CLI. So we have that manifest, right? apps.demo.cnoe.mydeployments.yaml. That's the CRD Open API spec manifest. And so we're going to take that, and now we're going to turn that into a Backstage template, and then we'll show the values that come out of that. So I'm showing that the CNOE CLI has some nice helps, and there's the very early version of it, right? Again, we see that we have no. I'm just showing where you can get the CNOE CLI.
We have it released. You can download the binary, or you can compile it.
Yep.
Yeah, and we just posted a link with the. Or you can download it.
CNOE CLI, Manabu made it so that it actually works with crossplane XRDs too. So if you're using crossplane, you can actually generate the same outputs for Backstage templates from directly from an XRD.
Yeah, in crossplane you create your claims, which basically are CRDs, and then
So here, sorry, yeah, exactly. I'll let you explain that in 1 second. But so here's the output of that, right? It's actually creating the Backstage template for you, and it kind of automatically hydrates all of these different properties inside the Backstage template, so you can see.
So this is a Backstage template now.
Yes. Yep. So now you see scaffolder.backstage.io v1 beta 3, and so I didn't do anything, right? Like the CRD. Open API spec contained enough information for us to basically create a JSON schema form for Backstage to consume, and so we can directly expose that that operator from our Backstage with that one CNOE CLI call. And then if you can imagine, like what we showed earlier with the Gitty workflows, you could actually have that automatically loaded into your backstage, so that you're as you're changing your operator, you're generating your backstage template from the CRD that is created, and then loaded into your backstage. And you can imagine a place where you get into like a flow where you're automatically loading your controller into the local Kubernetes on IDP Builder as you're developing it, using KO, and then you're automatically generating your template and loading that into your backstage. So really, within just a single IDE workflow, as you're modifying your Kube Builder or your Go code for your controller, you can be rapidly testing that the backstage template is also able to work with that controller, all within that one, probably a matter of minutes turnaround time. And instead of going through a full CI/CD process, you're getting all of that feedback rapidly as you're developing your controller.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it'll be, we can show that in a future episode of
absolutely.
Maybe things like I think the cross-plane composition or using Kubernetes APIs will be very useful, right? Because you can go and change. In this case, you can change the Go code, right, and then just run the make file. It generates the backstage template. Template is watching. IDP Builder is watching Gitty. It gets sync. Backstage wakes up. It shows us the new template on the screen, right? The same thing you can do for compositions. You're writing compositions in Crossplane. You can add a field or add a resource, save it in your local laptop, and then from that folder goes directly into Git. Git wakes up Argo CD, gets deployed there, gets deployed. The template gets generated, and Backstage automatically shows you the new version of your template.
That's right. Yeah, so I'm just showing here that I'm loading the template, and it's literally I just took that manifest file, put it into the local Gitty, and then use the manual registration because I didn't want to wait for it to pick it up. And so here's the fields, right? So that CRD takes in a name and an image name and the number of replicas you want, and deploys that. Renders a CR for that CRD and deploys it to the local Kubernetes cluster. And this is all done kind of with the CNOE plugins and the IDP Builder and the reference implementation. So if you were using all of that CNOE tooling with on your local machine, you kind of get all of this for free, right? You do need to understand controller development a little bit, but you could imagine if you're using Crossplane, like Carlos said, you could still do kind of like all of this local development. And Crossplane is actually installed by the reference implementation too with IDP Builder. So you get Crossplane made available to you as well.
Yep. And in CRDs, you can have enums, right? You can have options where you can have like, I don't know, if you're going to build a database, you can have small, medium, and large, right, to your end users. And that becomes a drop-down.
Exactly. Yep. So I know that this is a little bit advanced, although I do believe that we called this the advanced templating. But at the end of the day, this is all still using those same facilities that we showed earlier.
Here's the catch that you were saying. Like, you don't want to progress if the Kubernetes cluster doesn't have the CRD installed, just because you generated it, right?
I know it's a little bit low resolution just because of the way that we're broadcasting this video. But like Carlos said, what happened here was that I actually had forgotten to load the controller to the local Kubernetes cluster, and so that type wasn't available. So because we're invoking this directly against Kubernetes using the CNOE plugin to do that, we're able to actually see the output from the ask of loading the CR into Kubernetes directly inside this template interface. And so I'm highlighting the log line there that basically says that type was not found. So the Kubernetes admission controller is barking at us saying like, hey, you're trying to give me a CR for something I don't know about. And it's because I just needed to load the controller earlier in this demo and I forgot to.
So Jesse, I think we're not far like with like the good things about these tools that the people are choosing is because they're open source. So we're not that far from someone taking Backstage and adding a plugin that just goes directly to a Kubernetes cluster, discover all the CRDs, so maybe CRDs that are labeled something, right, IDP, and then just automatically the templates show up. Like the you show like kind of like the long version of it, like, or maybe the 2024 version of
Yeah,
it. But in
yeah.
2025, we could see like, oh, just go to this cluster and here's the templates that you will see, right? Directly, like get CRD, parse the spec, and then creates a template on the fly.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And so I think what's going to happen is hopefully by our next episode, I'll be able to show the work that we've done internally to make these workflows work with our CI/CD pipelines as well. And really that end goal of being able to programmatically test that all of these things work together is something that's super powerful. And so Greg Haynes, who's like kind of like my partner with a lot of this stuff, has done a lot of work, and actually IDP Builder was sort of his dream child originally, to make it easier for us to do that Kube Builder workflow development, with the CI pipeline feedback with our integration testing there and everything else. And yes, it really is. It's about being able to kind of like have this go end to end with really just, as soon as you make a commit, or as soon as you not even make a commit, as soon as you make a file system change, you can do test first development with this almost.
That would be amazing to see this difference, like, and see how you progress with those templating and CI/CD and building actually real workflow into your system. By the way, I think the verification would help me when I created the wrong API HPA back then.
Yep, you would have been able to use that place. So the CNOE is the validation. The CNOE validation can be invoked, and we as a part of that KubeCon demo, I actually hacked our backstage, our CNOE backstage image. So if you use our CNOE backstage image, you get that validator plugin built in for free, and so you can use that. In fact, you probably have it on your local backstage guy if you're running IDP Builder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So backstage is very powerful, IDP system to build your interfaces, and we are showing you one side of the house, right? Using Kubernetes as a programming model, right? And then putting interfaces on top of it, like could be CLI or this UI. But you go with Kubernetes APIs as the way that you surface your platform interfaces, right? And that could be infrastructure on the cloud, that could be infrastructure on premise. It could be the definition. So everything becomes Kubernetes, and then by definition, everything becomes native GitHubs, right? And that's one side of the house. Another side of the house, there's other projects like OPA guy that you're working with, Backstage talking directly to cloud APIs. So that way it's the same system that you can take advantage in terms of Backstage. It's a matter like, what do you want to plug in behind the scenes, and what are your team match the tool to the team, right? Do not force a tool. So in Jesse's example and Greg, there are platform engineers that know very well Kubernetes as an API. So they're building controllers, they're writing Go code, they know about CRDs, they know about OpenAPI spec. So naturally, they're going to use that tool to accelerate, but other teams might not. So they choose another one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that actually is one of the second biggest problems that we have, right? The first biggest problem is too many templates. And how do we, one of the second biggest problems we have is, what tools should folks be using to build their templates? And that's something I think we should get into the next episode is, template design. It shouldn't, there are some guidelines around what you should put inside your scaffolder versus what you should put inside of a backend system that is exposed via the scaffolder, and whether or not you want to use a tool like Argo Workflows, which we actually have a lot of examples of how we do this on some more Manabu's wonderful work, where the template is basically just invoking Argo Workflows, rather than building all that business logic directly into the template or into plugins that are written in TypeScript that you have to load into Backstage. To basically invoke Argo Workflows is a lot more powerful and a lot easier for folks to kind of understand. They can just build a container that executes some things, versus building a whole Kubernetes controller that also can be exposed via these templates. And so there's the right tool for the right purposes and the right use cases, and also for the right right tool for the developers that are building it. And what's really beautiful is that Backstage does allow us to bring all of these things together. So it's going to kind of like a little bit be of an all of the above. It already is for us at Autodesk.
I think it was an amazing wrap up to understand how things can come together and how actually using them, because that's the powerful of open systems and open reference implementation, that you can plug and play whatever you like in order to create in your own and pick your own tools, and make sure that you don't over engineer something that is very unique to your use cases, because this is something that people really love to do. Create something that is very complex and they use it on their own, then you need to maintain it for a very long time.
Right.
So I think it would be a good time to wrap up this session and make sure that everyone that is watching us now will join the next one to see kind of more advanced topics and how we can make it much, much further. Jesse, Carlos, thank you very much for joining. I think it was an amazing session. We were able to start from the beginning, jump into a very basic example, and then move into much, much more advanced use cases of how you can use scaffolding and templating in order to get your own application up and running. So thank you very much. And for everyone watching, next week we will have another weekly live stream session. Join us for this one and for the next one about Canoe. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe.
See ya.
Bye.